welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie, I'm a mixed media artist, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you a spread created in my Strathmore mixed media sketchbook and using Tombow dual brush pens as the base. So if you saw my recent video, which I'll link above in the cards, I tested out 3 different sketchbooks and compared them, and I realised in that video how good the Strathmore mixed media sketchbook is, but that I hadn't used Tombow brush pens in there before. I've mostly used it for paint and gouache work, so I thought this would be a really good way to use them for the base layer of my pieces and test out blending in a bigger scale. So I'm just putting down some panel boxes using my orange luminance, and I will put down the shades and numbers of everything that I'm using down below. I'm doing a sort of travel style journal spread which I've talked again about a lot on my channel, so I'll link a video as well up in the cards. But I really love using my memories and photos to create spreads like this because it gives a really nice personal connection in my sketchbook, and I just really love the way that it looks. It feels very me, kind of like I'm mixing journaling with sketchbooking. I don't sketch first, I come straight in, and that's the same with paint or with brush pens. I do find it helpful to start with the horizon, so I'm just putting down a line there. You can see I accidentally dropped my pen, so there's a random line at the bottom which we're going to cover up later. But I'm just starting with my sea, so again that's a really nice place to start because I've got the horizon and I can work downwards. And I'm using some different blue tones just to try and create the sea. I'm going quite bright in this spread with the colours, so you'll see how I blend it all together later on. But one of the things that I've started using a lot more recently is the colourless brush pen, which is by Tombow. And you'll definitely see me use that in the sky and the effect that it has with the clouds. But it's really changed the way that I blend with brush pens, and it's really helped soften up a lot of the marks. One of the things that I find with brush pens is that the texture is something that you really have to lean into, so once it's dried and you're going over it again, it does show up those marks. So I find that I kind of have to lean into that texture and really embrace it, but the Blender pen definitely helps with that. So I'm putting in some of the elements here at the bottom. This was a view from up the top of the hill, looking down onto the beach and then the sea beyond. There was a little bench, so I'm just adding that in and going around it with my different greens, and I put that in first with the sort of beige colour. It was coming to sunset when we were visiting the beach, so I wanted to add in some of those sort of late evening vibes in the sky. And I definitely am upping the saturation compared to the photo I'm actually drawing it from. But here you can see where I'm blending out some of those marks in the sky. So because clouds are really soft, I didn't want such a harsh line, which obviously comes from such a bold brush pen. So the blender definitely softens out some of these edges. You can see how it really fluffs them up. And although obviously it won't soften it completely, it definitely makes it less harsh. And so it's a technique I'm really enjoying using lately, and then I'm just building up some of the shadows with some other colours. I find that it works best when the pen is still quite wet, so you'll want to use the Blender pen almost as soon as you've put down the colour first to then soften the edges, because once it's dried, although it will soften it a little bit more, it works better when it's just been applied so the ink is still wet. I'm adding on my little swatches down the side, which I really like doing. And then down here at the bottom, the reason why I left a gap in the panel was because I knew I wanted to overlap some of my elements, and I'm just using a pencil to draw down the shape of the gull. Like I said, I don't often sketch first, but I do find it helpful with animals just to try and get their proportions a little bit more correct. And because I knew I wanted it to overlap, it was helpful for me to plan out where he was going. So there was a black-headed gull. Well, there were quite a few when we were at the beach eating our fish and chips, so I wanted to add him in, and I just really like including elements like that into my spreads. It adds a lot more character and helps me remember the day. So I'm using some different cool and warm-toned greys there, and then using the black, which I don't tend to use much in my work. I tend to shy away from such a dark colour, but it was helpful here for his black head, and then using a bright orange for his beak. I also used this to highlight his body because it was white and I couldn't see it very well against the white of the page, so just using that bright line definitely helped to add a bit of stylization. Unfortunately, I lost a load of footage here, so we are coming in at the end of this panel, and we also missed putting some trees on the other one, But you can see here I've drawn my fish and chips quite badly. I haven't done a great job there, but again I've tried to overlap the elements, so I've got some seaweed there on the left that kind of juts into the panel. And I'm just finishing off this drawing by adding in the wood that separates the beach from where we were sitting, and I used the very thin end of the Tombow for some of the waves. Again, I'm putting in some colours in the sky. This wasn't quite there when we were sat, but I really wanted it to feel like one cohesive spread. I wanted it to be obvious it was all from the same day, so I used the sky to try and merge it all together and make it cohesive. Now this bottom one definitely was very sunset vibes and loads of colours, so this was the main one that I took loads of photos of because the sun was setting, and so I'm focusing on the sky here and using some of the colours that I've used elsewhere in the thread, so the bright yellows and the pinks and oranges, to really highlight this and really bump up the saturation of the clouds. Again, I'm coming in with the same colours. This is quite a limited colour palette spread for me, but it's really nice to test myself a little bit sometimes, and like I said earlier, it does make it feel very cohesive. Again, I'm using that 553 colour for the clouds and filling in around it using some very soft marks and then softening it further and really trying to blend in those harsh lines with the Blender pen. I'm going around little bits of it with the grey, which is the N00, and filling in around some of the clouds. Now I'm not really looking at the reference at this point, I'm sort of just working around what I've got on the page. Keep coming in, swapping in with the pens and swapping back with the Blender pen, coming in with this really bright pink, again because this was when the sky was at its most colourful, so I wanted to add in just an extra little colour there just to brighten things up. And then I'm using the dark indigo luminance to darken up that horizon. I didn't want to use a black there, but I also didn't want to introduce another colour, so I just found that the luminance was perfect for that. And then coming in to add on the sand. So there was quite a lot of sand in this composition, in this photo, so I am using the brush pen on its side just to try and add more texture and interest. And I do come in using various different sort of beiges and light brown colours just to add in this sand. I do find that you can blend them not necessarily just with the Blender pen, but also with other shades. So if you have enough of the different shades, you can use that. You can see there where I'm putting down some of this darker brown, and then I'll come in with a lighter colour and mix it together. And I do find that this paper is really good for layering, so I don't have any problems with the Strathmore mixed media paper. It pills it a little bit, but not much, and certainly not as much as the Royal Talons. So I do find I can definitely embrace the blending on this stock. Then I'm coming in with a dark brown just to add in those little wooden groins that are on the beach, and really trying to add lots of interest. There were a lot of seaweed bits and stones on this beach, so I just kind of suggest those. I'm not drawing in every single stone, but I am adding in a lot of texture and suggestion of it by using squibbly lines and little circles. Then I'm coming in with the sea. I probably should have added the groins in last because I had to be careful going around it, but I'm using the same technique as before. I put down a base of the light blue and then coming in with the more lilac tone, and again softening up those lines with the Blender pen. Doing it all in one way definitely helps to create the effect of water, and I think this is a really nice technique for drawing water and creating the effect of waves. I come back and forth as always with my mediums, so I don't tend to just use one colour and move on. I'm always using multiple things and I keep returning to the same colours as well. Here I'm using the other end and also trying to show a reflection of that sky by adding in a little touch of pink, but I didn't want it to be super saturated because it's on the water, so just that little touch definitely helps to show that it's reflecting. And then finishing up with a few more details on the sand and the beach, and that's with the dark indigo and also this really lovely orange. It doesn't quite come up on camera, but just adding in those little elements definitely help to make the bottom corner of that picture a little bit more interesting. And then there's obviously a lot of gaps in my page, which is where I wanted to add my journaling. You can definitely add in more drawn elements if you prefer not to do this, but I really like combining my memories and my thoughts with writing with my drawings, so I like to include that in the spread. I really enjoy adding typography and some hand lettering on the page, so I'm just writing out the beach and some sort of labels for the things that I've drawn. And then I'll include some more personal memories about where we went and what we did on this day. And this was just a Friday evening, so you can easily do this for like a full holiday or a day or weekend, or even do a whole travel journal like this. I think it's really flexible. So I'm using an orange here just to, again, tie in those bright colours, and this is definitely more vibrant and bolder than I would normally go, but I really like it. I think it's got quite a nice graphic style. I think the end result is quite eye-catching. So just adding in the last few elements, including the date, and this is the end result. So I hope you enjoyed watching the process and enjoyed seeing a spread in the sketchbook using my Tombow brush pens. I hope this has inspired you to create your own journal style spread in your sketchbook, or maybe to grab out your Tombows and have a play. I hope you have a lovely week, and I will see you next Sunday with a new YouTube video. See you later.